And we're live. Welcome to Festival of Storytellers. This is your moderator, Ryan Mindo, and we're going to have an hour of exciting discussion. We have two of my special friends, very special to me because I've pretty much known them through calls. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ryan Mindo. I'm the Associate Manager for Orange Digital Tech. We are a partner of ReadersMagnet. And my initial thought of being a moderator for this live stream is a very, I'd say, butterfly in my stomach, nervous, but then very happy that I'm now ready to introduce Bobbie J. McLaren and her book. We're going to talk about it for an hour. First off, we'd like to thank ReadersMagnet and their entire hardworking staff for this event. They've been sponsoring this since April 19th, and we are very happy. And they are, they talk the talk, walk the walk, because they do share your stories to the world. All right. I'd like to set some expectations before we begin. So we'd like to have our audience mute their audio during the session. And on the right side of your screen, because we are going live, ladies and gentlemen, on the right of your screen, you'll see a chat box. Please drop in any questions that you have. We are ready to answer that questions. Bobbie J. McLaren here is ready to answer the questions. We got our good panelist, Junila Bueva. And I think it's about time we introduce one of the panelists, Junila Bueva. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers, and I'm so happy to be surrounded with a bunch of talented folks on this live stream. We got Ryan Mindo and Bobbie J. McLaren, a fellow creative, a writer, a painter, and I'm just so happy to be part of this remarkable event, virtual book fair that ReadersMagnet has put up. And again, my name is Junil Abueva. I'm the head of operations for Orange Digital Technologies. We are the partner of ReadersMagnet for web traffic optimization. And that's pretty much it for me, because this hour is not about me, but it's about Bobbie J right there. So I'm going to give it back to Ryan.
All right. Now, if you heard about ReadersMagnet and you haven't yet, you might want to grab your phone, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and search ReadersMagnet and type Bobbie J. McLaren. They've written a lot of articles on Bobbie J. McLaren. And the best part is she is our author of the hour. And I'd like to read an featured author bio of Bobbie McLaren. It goes like this. Bobbie J. McLaren was born in South Florida in the 1950s in northern Palm Beach County. She graduated from Palm Beach Garden High School, although much to the surprise of many, in 1972. You got to tell us something about that. Always writing something, whether poetry, short stories, or gospel music, she has always had a need to create. Now living in Northeast Alabama atop Lookout Mountain, she is involved with writing vacation Bible school programs for her church and working with drama. Learning to paint and to sketch in addition to full-time employment keeps this author very busy indeed. She shares her home with 2 cats, actually 3 cats, and her life with her family that lives all around her in the Fort Payne area. With no further ado, we'd like to introduce Bobbie J. McLaren. Woo!
Why, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. And Janelle. It's been quite a different thing growing up in Florida, and especially during the times that we did, being a child of the 50s, and then, of course, of the 60s, which were quite, if you know anything about the 60s, it was like, if it feels good, do it. If it really is good, do it 3 or 4 times. And everything was peace and love, but it was a lot of violence. But anyways, it was a lot of, you go back to like Laura Ingalls Wilder and you read her books and everything is very simple. And people say, oh, the good old golden days, and oh, for the days of yore. I loved growing up in that time. However, I'm a spoiled child, and I love water heaters, electric or hot, gas. I love microwaves. I love computers. And we didn't have these when I was growing up. Heck, we didn't even have cell phones. We had party lines.
I'd like to read a featured book synopsis that we have prepared for it. It goes like this.
Uh-oh.
In a time before fast food, microwave ovens, and home videos, there existed a world where adventure was as close as your next thought. Entertainment wasn't where you go or how much money you spent, but what you did. Mm-mm. Playing outside was the normal thing for most children. In fact, to stay in the house, right,
Mm-hmm.
was sheer punishment. Being grounded usually meant no television or use of the telephone. And these are stories of a very imaginative child and the love of a father. A world that seemed to move more slowly and a time that watched history change on a daily basis as never before in the 20th century with joy and sorrow, tears and laughter. The sounds at River's Edge is viewed from the eyes of a child spanning only 4 years. Woo. But what years they were. It's a wonder any of us survive. Tell us more about this, Bobby J.
Well, the book actually spans, and you see a oh, I'm backwards. You see a picture of it there, and you got the waterway and everything. It spans me being like 4 to 4.5 years old up to 8,
Mm.
and in those 4 years or 4.5 years, it's just amazing to me the crazy things that I would do to my sister Sherry, or that she would do to me. And as we came along and growing and stuff, it was kind of like any siblings. You do something to me, I'm going to do something back. But a lot of times you don't have the same. Where nowadays, I don't know what they would do. I live in a different world now than I did there. Down there, we had the fiddler crabs and the land crabs and every kind of crab that my sister was scared of, every kind of bug that she was scared of.
Mhm.
And my sister and my cousin, who was my sister's favorite best friend, well, they would lock me up in closets with all these broken toys, so I didn't bother them when they played because I was 4 years younger. And
Mm.
anyone that has one sibling that's 4 years younger, you find out that sometimes that kid can be a pest. Not that you mean to be, it's just that you really want to play with them too, but they just don't want you to play with them.
Yeah.
So in the 4.5 years, I don't remember much. I mean, I've met people that'll say, I remember when I was 2. No, I don't remember that. At least I don't think so. But I remember when I was 4, and I remember the first story that is actually in the book, which starts at the beginning, where I had been watching cartoons. It's called A Leap of Faith. I had been watching cartoons. My favorite thing to do on Saturdays. I mean, even though I didn't go to school, there's no other day of the week at that time that you could get a whole morning full of cartoons. I mean, during the week you had Captain Kangaroo. In Florida we had Skipper Chuck. There was even Howdy Doody. They would do some reruns of that. That's through the week, but on the weekends, oh my gosh, you had the Looney Tunes. You had Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and the reason I like Daffy better than Donald, if anyone were ever to ask you, is because I can understand what Daffy says. I don't have a clue when Donald's going, that stuff. I don't know what he's saying. But with Daffy, you can understand everything he says. And I loved it every time that when he would be running along. I mean, you got to get this picture. Here's Daffy Duck, this black duck with this big yellow bill, and he gets it slapped off. Now, we know that really can't happen. But at 4, you don't know that. And his eyes get like this big because there's no bill. And all of a sudden he picks it up and he sticks it back on. Now, we know that doesn't happen in real life because you know what? We're adults. But as a kid, that made perfectly good sense. It got knocked off, you put it back on. So it goes on. You got the Roadrunner, you have Wile E. Coyote, you've got Yosemite Sam, Pepe Le Pew, all these wonderful things. And you have Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. And Elmer is always chasing the rabbit. I'm going to get you, you rascally rabbit. You know? And love the laugh, man. Anyways, and so on one of the programs, Bugs, of course, is being chased by Elmer. and he's got his gun and he's running, and here goes Bugs, and he runs and runs till he gets to this cliff, and this cliff is straight down, and he stands there, and you got to remember, I'm a kid and I'm watching this screen, and he stands there and it's like he's looking straight at me, and all of a sudden he reaches behind his back and he brings out an umbrella and he pops it open. And at that time, they didn't even have pop open umbrellas like we do now. You press a button, and it goes, boop. They didn't have those in. He had one. See, he should have patented that. Anyways, he had it, and he took it like that, and he looked straight in my face and stepped off the cliff. And he floated ever so gently down, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Oh my God, I need to do that. I have to do that. Well, my dad had bought my mom this brand new umbrella. And it was the old-fashioned kind, of course, because that was during that time. There were no short umbrellas. All of them were long, like a cane, like a walking stick. And they all had that curved handle. Well, Mom's was a nice, beautiful milk chocolate brown. And it had gold along the handles, and on each one of the little stems of the umbrella had a little gold thing. And I went into the closet in the hallway, and I got that umbrella. And I was like, man, I was out the door. I checked the house, out the door, ran out to our patio, and I stood there and I looked. And I looked around, and all of a sudden I realized, ooh, ran to the patio, up on top of our concrete picnic table. I could reach this live oak tree. Now, live oak trees have these little tiny leaves. They're not like a big oak like where I live now. I was fascinated when I saw oak leaves as big as my hand. It's like, really? An oak? Thought they were only thumb size. So anyways, this limb is hanging out over the garage. And so it was down low enough that I was able, as a little 4-year-old, with this umbrella, to crawl up into the tree. And I held onto the umbrella, and I straddled the limb like you would a horse. And I scooched all the way over on this limb. I could have fallen and broken my neck, but here I am going all the way over. I got onto the garage. I got over to a good spot, and I remember thinking, I hope nobody's up. If they're up, I'm caught. Not that I'm on the roof, but that I have my mother's brand new umbrella. I mean, I'm going to get it for that. So I looked down, like, ooh, is Daddy up yet? No, I didn't see any movement in the house. So I pushed the umbrella open, put it up over my head, looked again, and off the roof I went. And I even wrote, I do not remember how long it took to get from the roof to the hedge of crotons, but I was in the hedge. The umbrella was under me, a tangled mess. And I was laying there trying to figure out, it's like, what happened? And then all of a sudden I saw the legs of my dad. And you know how you get that feeling like, okay, perfect example. If you're driving a car and a police car comes up behind you with his lights on, is he after you or is he going to go around?
And your breathing stops.
And that was one of those feelings I had with my dad, like, oh my God, I've got caught. But at the same time, it's like, oh, Dad, And when he picked me up, and realized I was okay, he started to do that laugh. And he just held me up against him. And I knew that everything was going to be okay. And in the story, at the very end, I actually had put in there a part of a Proverbs. And at the end of Proverbs, and I'll read this to you, it says that, where is it? I got it. It's right here. It talks about us not being wise in our own eyes. Seriously, sometimes even in my life today, I think, ooh, this is going to be really good. I'm going to do this. And then you look back and you're going, what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
But I did learn, and ending that story, I did learn not to leap in a single bound.
Right.
Now, for all you folks,
yes,
for all you folks who are actually live right now, you can check out the sounds at River's Edge by Bobbie J. McLaren. That's actually on page 11 to 13. If you can do a quick Google on that, you could pretty much read that entire story there. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Janelle. got you cut off there. Sorry.
Yeah, as I was just saying that, the people in the live audience right now at the Festival of Storytellers stage is saying that when while Bobbie was was telling that story to us, a lot of them saying that it brings back a lot of memories. So you hit some triggers there, Bobbie. So and and someone said, Fairgoer 11209, that you're a very good storyteller. So
Oh, well, thank you,
um
Fairgore.
yeah, yep. So yeah, and I have a question for you, Bob, because this creative I mean, your creativity somehow started at a very young age, right? And
Yes.
would you remember the very first time you really wrote something,
I
and what
think
was
I,
that?
I think as soon as I started learning how to write, because I thought words were so neat, you could take letters and form them into to words. I mean, just what I think one of the biggest things that fascinated me when I was in elementary school was the word READ, because it could be read or read. You put a Y and it's ready, and you can change words around so easily. And you can use one word that has so many different meanings. I mean, and I used to actually, okay, I admit this. I admit it on air. I actually used to read, besides looking through the dictionary, I actually used to read the thesaurus, just simply because I wanted to know what word would be better used that
Nice,
that would
nice.
that would not get me in trouble with my parents, because
Well,
sometimes I wanted to use a word that they might not necessarily like.
good for you. You had a thesaurus back then. I mean, and
Well,
good
you get
for
tired of being spanked, it's like, oh no. Which reminds me,
and
guys, spankings did not kill me. I actually turned out okay. Well, I think I turned out okay. That may still
well,
be out for
yeah.
debate.
Well,
Here's a
that's
quick
a
question.
solid
Here's
argument. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
so here's a quick question. So writing came in naturally, or was it something that was embedded to you? I mean, something that just came up as a spark, and hey, I want to start writing.
Well, I actually started journaling. When I was younger, you called it a diary. And then later, it just got to the point where I started journaling, because I would have so many internal thoughts that sometimes I think my brain moved a whole lot faster than my mouth, which is hard to believe because my mouth does not stop sometimes. But my brain would go so quickly onto different subjects. If I would write things down and go back and look at it and then read what I've written, I would have more clarity on exactly what I was planning. And
Mm,
sometimes life gets a little muddled, and sometimes our perception can be a little bit off. So, with writing, especially with journaling, I think anyone that starts off journaling, I went from journaling to writing poetry. From
yeah.
poetry, I went to writing music and
Oh,
songs.
wow.
Um, and then after the songs, I mean, I've always written little short stories. I remember when I was in elementary school, I wrote some story about a scuba diver, because, living in Florida, a scuba diver that got swallowed by a giant clam,
Oh man,
you know,
that's quite an
and
imagination, huh?
and he was laying in there, and what his thoughts were with this clam, because the clam's tongue kept going balloon, balloon up against his body, and I think I was probably about 7 when I wrote that, and I gave it to my
Wow.
teacher, and it was called, what was it, Clammy Joe, because the
Clammy
skin
Joe.
diver's name was Joe, and the
Okay.
clam had swallowed him, and they had to send down a submarine with these big, like Jules Verne type stuff, that they were able to open the clam to get Joe out.
And you were 7 back then, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I
Oh
don't know
man,
whatever happened to that story,
I
but I remember it.
I can't even write a single line right now. I mean, but but someone from the audience, Bobbie, piggybacked on that and said, "Oh my, you're a genius." When you found out, and this is a good follow up question with that 7 year old story of Clammy Joe. When you found out that you are fun with words, how did you hone your skills and become an author? And that's a good question.
Oh wow. How did I hone my skills?
Was it conscious? Was it a conscious effort
I
or
don't. I really don't
yeah?
think so. Because
Okay.
truthfully, if my high school English teacher, uh, Miss Good, was alive now, she would tell you that I hated diagramming sentences.
Oh, okay.
And diagramming sentences and learning exactly what word goes where and what it does. I was like, I don't care where they go. I just want to talk. And when you begin to understand that if you speak more clearly, and it goes back to, I guess, well, all right. When I was in high school, I got grounded for a year for something that I did not do, but
Mm.
I was a part of it. And that's where it's like, okay, if somebody's robbing a bank, don't be their friend. That's not what happened. But I'm just saying, if somebody were to rob a bank, don't ride in the car with them.
Yeah.
So I got grounded for a year, and for a year, actually 9 months, I got off in 9 months for good behavior. Hard to believe, yes. I got off 9 months for good behavior, but during that time, I was grounded into where I stayed in my room. I had to stay in my room. So I read the 1959 version of the Encyclopedia Britannica from A to Z.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've told you I like
Wow.
to read. Well, I could only get so many books because I was grounded. Couldn't watch TV, couldn't use a
Yeah.
phone except once a week. And so in reading things, types of writing flow. And in reading books, there's a flow and there's almost like a music to words.
Mm-hmm.
Because they when they join together and they sync, and you can get clarity and you can get an understanding of what was written, then you've got magic. But if you write stuff that it doesn't sync together like that, you just have a page full of chaos.
Yep.
And I have to thank Miss Good for forcing me to diagram sentences, so I did know the difference between a verb and adverb and all those wonderful fun things. But it was not a fun experience. Anyone that enjoys that, I think somewhere along the line they're just maybe I've just got the loose screw. I don't know.
To
Anyways, we're
our
all different, and that's great.
to to our viewers out there, I'm pretty sure they're itching to ask this question. Bobbie, what are the processes involved in writing the book River's Edge?
The first book, well, the first book, which I'm in the process of writing, Sounds of River's Edge 2, but in the first book, I didn't really have a process in the beginning. I just started writing stories. Actually, I started telling stories.
Mm.
And my sister and my best friend Christine, they were like, "Man, you got to write this stuff down." And Christine, God bless her, she actually did all the editing for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would give her the stories, and I was like, "Okay, you ready for another story?" And she'd be like, "Oh, sure." Now she's the kindest person in the world. She would never look at me and go, "I am so sick of your stories," but yeah, she would just do it anyway. But so she edited, but they would tell me if you don't write these things down, nobody will ever know the stories. And
Right.
I told Kate Delaney that my dad had told me when I was a kid that unless you're famous or infamous, like Al Capone and all those, or Hitler and one of them, nobody will remember you 100 years from now. You
Mm.
may have a tombstone somewhere, but people will come along and go, wow, that person. So unless you're famous or infamous, they don't know who you are. And they won't remember your story. But whether I'm remembered or not, the stories will be,
Yeah.
because they're in print and they'll be passed down to my nephews and my nieces, because I don't have any children of my own. No, I'm
Mm.
not married, never had any children, never been married. I don't play well with others. Hard to believe, isn't it, guys?
Hard to believe.
So you think I'm a
Well,
nice person.
we're 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 loving the session
Well,
right now.
thank
It
you.
doesn't seem like it, So
Yeah. But
yeah,
anyways,
and
what you had asked
there's a
about
question in the
writing a
audience,
book.
and
Oh,
yeah.
okay. What you had asked about writing a book. When I got halfway through the first one here, I actually realized that, you know what? I need to have some kind of an outline. I need to know how long, how many stories am I going to put into this book? And
Mm.
so I thought, well, if every story is 5 to 7, maybe 10 pages, then I should have at least, if I want 200 pages, I should have 20 stories. So that's
Okay.
what I did. I sat down with the first that I had written, and then I went, okay, I need X amount of stories to make the 20. And then on each book since, except for the first annual Duck Springs Whistling Contest, which I had already written. Anyways, but for the books I'm writing now, I have an outline. I actually do go ahead and write X amount of chapters. And in some of those chapters, I've even written sub-chapters, subtitles in the outlines. So I actually do that now.
Okay, and this is a follow-up question, Bobbie, on the writing process, because you said that when you
Okay.
started, you didn't have any writing process, but
Mhm.
going through the second half of the book, that's when you started to, outline and all that. But
Right.
a fair goer asked, what is your most favorite part of writing, or of your writing process, or if there's any? That's a tough one, huh?
Yeah, well on the books like the Sounds at River's Edge, I think are the memories. I think
Okay.
that's the sweetest. Because you can write it and then you can rewrite it, and it's still really good. I mean, it's just it's that warm kind of hug feeling.
Yeah.
With the others, like Really God, the one I'm doing there is more of well, the subtitle of that is Finding Peace in the Midst of Chaos.
It's fascinating.
So many things that we question, especially we're just coming out of a year of this pandemic,
Right. Right.
and there's so many things that happen that people do question. Really, God? Really?
True.
And there's answers to be found, and a lot of it comes down to the fact of the position of our heart and our attitudes of how we go through things. And I think people need to realize they're a lot stronger than they realize. They do not they can tap into that strength. Human beings are made as survivors. We really are. Everything about us. If you just take the human body itself, and when a child falls and gets a cut, the human body does everything in its power to heal that.
Mm-hmm.
If the physical body does that, our mental and spiritual being is just as, if not more, strong than the physical. So
Agree.
if we could get ourselves together, and that's where really God is coming into the fact that we as human beings are more than just survivors. In fact, the Bible says we're more than conquerors. And that's not just a survivor. That's somebody that's like, woohoo,
Yeah.
I'm the victor, man. I
Winner.
made it.
We were born winners, huh?
Absolutely.
Yep. And you were saying, Ryan.
Well, it's fascinating because I'm actually online and reading some pages on the sounds at the river edge. Um, there is a question though, but you can answer this later. I'm saying it's fascinating that reading your book, takes me to that same time, my childhood days, and it just it just affects the reader on I wish I could bring back time where I could have
Correct.
said something to my mom and my
Yeah.
dad, right? And then
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
it gives us the purpose of why come and read books like these. Now, was
Right.
it your goal, Bobbie, to get them, like having your book as a time machine to get them go back to same experiences where we back in my days we'd go in at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my mom would say, Ryan, go to bed, have your siesta. We call it siesta here. And then
Right.
and we think that's a punishment because we want to go out and play with my
Yeah.
good friends,
Right. Yeah.
but is that something, is that one of your goals, Bobbie?
I think so. In a lot of ways, it's one of those things where um, when you read about people, even in the writings of Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck, in their writings, because of the way they wrote, you actually get a picture of them. Because I don't believe that there is any author that can write anything without injecting into that book a part of who they are. So it's, yeah, I want them to understand. when my nieces and nephews and great nephews and people down the line, and they look back and they say, "Man, does anybody remember that crazy person, Bobbie McLaren?" And they'll say, "Oh yeah, let me tell you why she was the way she
There,
was." And
there.
there's stories. There's something that can give some background that this is how I developed into who I am.
Yep. And on a
Oh,
technical aspect, there is this psychology about
Sure.
people are fun of nostalgia, and
Hmm.
this book is really, really hits that, and which is why it becomes a very effective book, so to speak, for readers, especially
Hmm.
for those who are on the emotional side of things, right? So
Yeah.
it allows you to reflect on a lot of things. So, and that's
Yeah.
very good. And there is a question in the audience, Bobby.
Okay.
um can you tell a little bit about why you chose the title "The Sounds of River's Edge"?
Oh, that's great. Actually, it's because of the sounds that were there, the sounds of laughter, the sounds
Wow.
of me going out in the evenings with my dad. In our backyard, we had this huge Australian pine tree. They grow tall and straight, but they're really big. And the
Mm-hmm.
base was big enough that even if myself, and my sister, we might have been able to, hold hands around the bottom of it. It was big. But we'd go out in the evening, me and my dad, and we'd lean against that tree and we'd sit there and we'd look out at the stars and we'd listen to the sounds. And during that time in Florida, which was very wooded, you could hear the Florida bobcats sometimes actually out there like, wow, and dad would
Wow.
go, "Oh, listen, you hear that?" And he'd say, "That is a bobcat." Now, every now and then we could hear what they call the Florida cougar. It's a totally different sound. That's almost like a screech. And it was well. Anytime we'd hear that, Dad would say, "I think we need to go inside," because you never know how close they are. Because with the water, echoes.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds echo. Um, when we'd sit out there a couple times, especially during mating season for the alligators, we'd sit on one side of the intercoastal, and on the other side there was a little cove, and it was very just like it shows, like right here. It was very grassed and very dense, and you could hear if you know anything about alligators, when the males are attracting the females, their backs vibrate, and it makes the
Oh,
water
wow.
dance. Yeah, the water dances. It's
I
like
didn't know
that,
that.
and it bounces up and down, and you can hear. See, it gives me chills just thinking about it again. And Dad would say, "Shh, listen." And we'd listen, and you could hear the water splashing and sprinkling. And he said, "The male alligator's trying to get him a girlfriend." And I'd be like, you know. And it was just sounds you could hear. The whippoorwill. I the first time I ever heard a whippoorwill was down there. The first time I ever heard, um, I'm not even sure what kind of a gull it is. Dad says they only sung at night, but it would make that ooh like sound like that, and we'd sit there and he'd say, "Yep, it's putting its babies to bed," and he'd have a story for everything. And I think because my dad was such a great storyteller,
Yeah.
that it kind of just came naturally, and I love spending time with him. He's the one that we'd sit there and he'd say, "Now, what do you see? Can you find Orion's belt?" And I'm like, "Who? What?" And he would teach me about the different constellations, and it was just an exciting time.
Nice. And you have such an amazing childhood, Bobby. And
Yeah.
I mean, the place itself is already one, but having a good storyteller in your father is, is gold,
Yep.
So and there are a couple of questions from the audience as well, and I think you've answered them already, as far as how do you get your inspiration to write, and what was your intention on writing this book. And b um from what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you just really love telling stories, right? And
I do.
you, yeah, and you wanted for these stories to be remembered, in the lifetime of whoever gets touched by it, right?
Yes.
So, but there's another question here that or a comment from the fairgoers. I think you got it from your dad, and I'm sure you would agree. The storyteller in you. But the question is, are you still doing it now, or maybe I should say, are you also doing it to your nephews or nephews or grandchildren?
You mean telling them
The story,
stories?
yeah, the telling
Oh
them
yes,
stories.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, the book that Reader's Magnet, and I'm so grateful to them, because in the book that we're talking about tonight was I actually published in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I didn't do anything with it, but Reader's Magnet came along, and of course during the pandemic, um, I one of the reasons I wrote the book also is because I like to encourage people. People need to be encouraged. I don't care, even before the pandemic, life
Nice.
sometimes can get really hard. So the book that I sent to Reader's Magnet, the first annual Duck Springs Whistling Contest, I had actually used some other kids' names in it. However, they were real names of real people that I knew, and I don't know where they are now because I wrote that story back in 1988. And I thought, man, I'm going to change the names because I don't want anybody to come back and say, hey man, you used my name. I know who. And so I changed, and it worked out so well. I changed the name in the as the main character to my great nephew Tyler,
Oh
and
wow.
his name is Tyler James Nadolny, and I only used the Tyler James as his last name. And then
Nice.
the other young man that is the store owner's son, I changed him to Brandon, who is my other great nephew. I only have the two, and they are the light of my life. In that they're precious. I just love them both. In fact, the oldest one is getting ready to uh, graduate from nursing school. He's going to be a registered nurse, and I'm so proud of him. The other one actually is 6 years old, and I actually took a picture of him with his tooth knocked out because I wanted to draw a kid with his tooth knocked out. Well, his
You
mouth, I
see,
couldn't get it quite right, and I took a picture of Dr. Murphy's, it's her niece, Presley, and I took a picture of her mouth too. So I ended up combining the together on
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah, I love telling them stories, and I love telling them stories that are true, because
Yeah.
anybody can make up a story. You
Right.
can make up stories for anything. I mean, as a child, I was one of the biggest liars there was, because it was so much fun to embellish things. And that's one of the reasons why with this story here, the Sounds of River's Edge, I actually took it to my mom and I was like, Mom, let me read this to you and you tell me if it's true. And my mom would laugh like crazy and she'd go, oh my God, yes, I remember that. And she'd laugh and she goes,
Nice.
it's absolutely true. In fact, she goes, you could even add, I'm like, no, I'm not adding that. So,
now, Bobbie,
The
now,
mom
Bobbie,
wanted to add some chapters, huh?
oh,
your
absolutely. My
book
mom
comes.
wanted some chapters too. I said, no, no, we're not going to do that. But
There are actually different chapters, ladies and gentlemen, special for our viewers out there. We got the Sounds of Joy, which is on page 17. We got the Father's Love, or A Father's Love, on page 23. On these chapters, Bobbie, tell us which of these chapters would be more of like your favorite, and
oh
I hope
gosh.
you can share it with your viewers right now and our listeners right now who's going live.
I would say that between those two, even though The Love of a Father is a great story, The Sound of Joy that talks about Pop, he's my paternal grandfather. I was
Mm.
only 4.5 when he died, but that man made such an impact. I mean, you think about how that you touch people's lives when you really
Mm.
think about it. That every interaction you have with somebody, you're leaving a part of who you are there. And are you leaving it good or bad? I knew this man for 4.5 years because he lived right next door to us. And in that 4.5 years, that man, he's even now talking about him. My heart just melts because he he embodied everything there is about a man who loves his family. He loved to laugh, And I always thought of Pop as a square man. Now, when I say square, a lot of people think that means uncool. No, square. I mean square, like square, you know? And I think it's
Right.
because most of the time I saw him was when I would go to Pop's house with my dad, and Pop would be sitting in his chair, and he had these broad shoulders, and he was a big man. I mean, he was like 6 foot something, but he had these really broad shoulders, and he just looked like a big square man sitting in that seat. And when he would laugh, the whole house would just fill with laughter. And every time we went, we'd go in, and he'd say to my dad, he'd say, "Hey, Eddie," and my dad would, talk to him, and he'd say, "You got that boy with you?" And I'd be, "Pop, I'm not a boy." He said, "Come on in here, Robert." I'm like, "I'm a
Robert.
girl." And he'd joke and laugh, and he'd say, "Well, your name is Bobbie." I said, "Well, yeah, Pop, but it's Bobbie with an I." I mean, we argued about that all the time. You got to figure a
That's
little
so
kid.
cute.
I went to church today, and there was these three little kids outside, and the two little girls and the boy. And I spoke to the boy and asked him, I said, "Hey, man, did you get your hair cut?" And he goes, "No." And so I said, "Well, hello, ladies." And he goes, "I'm a boy." And I said, "I already spoke with you. I was talking to them." "Well, I'm still a boy." And it made me, it brings it right back to this story because, grown-ups will play with you and they can
Yeah.
mess your mind up.
Yeah.
But, every time I'd come in and then Pop would, I'd climb up in his lap, and he was just, he was the embodiment, like I said, of a person that just loved
Mm.
life, loved his family. And I never really understood when I was little why he had to go away.
Yeah,
But
and you were four. You were four.
Daddy told me he had to go be with Jesus. And I was like, well, of course I didn't understand that either completely. Because I
Uh-huh.
thought, well, I thought Jesus had enough people with him, but you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing reading these kinds of books. Very, very common in the market. Now, going that path, are you considering writing another set of River's Edge
Oh,
kind
well,
of
and like I said,
genre?
I'm working on River's Edge book 2, and it actually starts from 8 up until my sister when she leaves. Let's see, when she left, I think I was 15. So it'll get into the teen years a little bit. I don't want to get too much into that because I think everybody's crazy when they're teenagers.
That's true.
I
That's
think
true. And
I think we all see. I don't know. They don't even do this anymore. But I remember the Volkswagen Bug and trying to see how many people. Kids are like, "No, man, we're not going to do that." But I remember when I was 15 that one of our neighbors had a Volkswagen Bug, and I'm telling you, we got at least 13 people in there. And if they would have opened that little thing on the roof, where you got the wind coming through. Anyways, I think we could have got another 2. Now there might have been arms and legs sticking out, but everybody was trying it back then. It's like how many people can you get in your car? Sneaking into the drive-in with people in your trunk because you had to pay by how many people you had. You go to the
yeah,
drive-in theater, which there's not many of those left around either.
none.
But you have 2 people in the car, but you got like 5 in the trunk.
That's a lot of fun. And there is a very interesting question here, Bobbie, because we talked about this in the backstage
Okay.
earlier. And it comes from one of our fair goers. It's fairgoer 11159, and he had 2 questions which are for me related. How and what is your strategy on marketing or promoting your book, and what would be the best advice that you could give for the aspiring writers that wish to publish a book someday?
Marketing. I'm just learning marketing. So I'm going to tell you what little bit I know. Number
Okay.
one, you need to find people that will believe in you. Because a lot of times as a writer, you don't believe in yourself. I mean, just as a human being, sometimes we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that maybe we're good enough or what we have. Does anybody really want to read what I write? I mean, I think that a lot. It's like, why would I want to put this into that? Because who's going to read this? Well, then I thought, you can always give your books away and make them read it, maybe. But for marketing, surround yourself with people that believe in you, that are willing to help you, even if it's just like, go man, hey, atta girl, just to encourage you. If you're looking for marketing, I love Readers Magnet, what they've done, because I've not been involved with Readers Magnet that long, but they have encouraged me to do this with my book, to get it out there, to let people know about it. And since dealing with Readers Magnet, I mean, I was telling Ryan, I was telling Ryan earlier that I actually had a book reading yesterday in Lookout Valley up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, hosted by Dr. Murphy, nicknamed Bubbles. And it was wonderful. I mean, it was an outside venue. It was just great. That was my very first one ever, really. And at least, okay, it was my second. The first time was at the Lions Club, but we're not going to talk about that because it was the day after I got my COVID shot. And I think I was like spaced out. I didn't even remember what I read. I think I read the longest chapter in the book because I was even thinking, oh my God, is this ever going to end? It was awful.
That's so funny.
But surround yourself with things like that. And then because of Readers Magnet helping me and encouraging me, I actually went back to Zulon Press, which printed, they published my first book here, the Rivers Sounds at River's Edge. And I actually worked with them to turn it into an ebook, because right now the ebooks are selling. And I want it available, even if it only costs 50 cents. I want it available, because if people don't read it, they don't know about it. If it's not available, they can't read it. So, and the other part of the question was, Janelle?
What advice would you give to the aspiring writers out there?
Oh, do it. Just do it. I was listening. There was another author on here called Luthi. I can't think of her last name. She's awesome. She wrote a book called Spirit Dancer, which I bought.
Luthi West.
Yes, Lucy.
Spirit Dancer.
Lucy. It's not Lucy. It's Luthi with a
Luthi.
TH. Anyways, West. And I actually bought her book because, I mean, she just fascinates me. And the whole thing comes down to the fact that I had even written to her I in the chat thing, because she's inspiring, and I think we need to inspire one another. But when I started painting, and I had the greatest paint teacher, she was wonderful.
Show them one of your artwork, Bobbie.
Let me see if I can get over here and do it. Oh, can you see that? Let's get it where there's nothing on it. That's my blue heron, and I actually I keep the canvas, but I've made some prints of it, which I can sell, and I do sell on my website. But I told Luthi that my art teacher, who has passed on. In fact, I quit painting for 5 years because I was so disturbed by her loss. But I have so many good memories, and she would kick my tush if she knew that I had quit painting. But one of the things that she taught me was that the hardest stroke is the first one. So touch the canvas with that brush the first time is the scariest. But once you get started, you can go. Same way with a book. And I know that when I was doing some of the book readings earlier this week with Readers Magnet on the Festival of Storytellers, somebody had written in on the chat and they said, is it energizing or is it exhausting? And I'm going to tell you, to write is both. The biggest thing is when you get exhausted, or when you get to the point where you feel like you don't know what you're doing, just get up and walk away, and then come back to it new and fresh. Once again, I'm going to bring a painting in. I've painted a picture, and I'll be in front of it, and I'm looking at it thinking, oh God, this looks so bad. And I'll leave it. I'm like, I need to get away from it. Just go away. Won't even go back in my art room for a couple days. Walk back in later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks really good.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like the little art fairies came in and they painted it while I was out, which in reality they didn't.
I love the art fairies.
But when you get away from something, that you get bogged down, and like I said, you're like, oh, just get up and walk away. Just leave it where it is and get away from it, and just go do something that's going to relax you. Go out. I go outside if I'm at home. I go outside and sometimes with a cup of coffee, or sometimes I do it with a glass of wine, and I'll just sit out on my deck and watch the birds and listen to them sing and watch the squirrels and just relax and enjoy nature. And then when I finally go back to writing, I'll go back a little bit, read what I've written, and it's like, well, you know what? That wasn't so bad. And I may even change some of it, but you get a new perspective because it's almost like you're looking at it all fresh and all new. So yes, by all means, just start. If you have to
Yeah.
start with journaling, if you like poetry, write poetry. And if you think it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't have to. If you know anything about English, you don't have to have rhyming just to be poetry. It
Poetry.
just
Yeah.
has to be your heart. So
Right.
write your heart, write your
Now,
feelings.
Bobbie, you got to tell your viewers where to buy your book, and tell them more about where to buy them. Let us
Okay.
know about your website. Come on, tell them.
Okay. Well, my website actually is my name, BobbieJMcLaren.com. And you can go there and you can hook onto the bookcase. And on the bookcase right now, you can either buy my book with Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or you can even go to PayPal. And you can even go to the easel where I've got two of my paintings where I'm selling prints. I've got a bunch more eventually. I'll get on there. And very soon, according to Reader's Magnet, I will have my second book, my children's book, and I'll have that
Nice.
one on my bookshelf. Yeah. And I've
Looking
already been
forward.
invited. Hey, listen, that book isn't even published yet. And I've already been invited by some of the elementary school teachers to come and read to their class my book
Wow.
when it's done. So it's
Nice.
like,
Nice.
whoa,
Wow.
yeah, I'm
Nice.
excited.
And this is coming from an author, ladies and gentlemen, in the live audience, on the replay of you on of this video on Readers Magnet's YouTube channel.
YouTube
Bobbie
channel.
was talking about when she started, she didn't really wanted to make herself a brand, and she was shying away from that because all she wanted was to tell a story. But and this is what we get when we start, and that's a very good advice that you gave earlier, Bobbie, that when you start and when you sustain it, things like this happen eventually. And when you start to put yourself out there, people will recognize the real, the genuine intentions of whatever art you're doing. And here's Bobbie McLaren doing book readings, for the first book, and invited to read over a bunch of kids for her up and coming children's book. So that's that
And
that is awesome.
and isn't it a great feeling, Bobbie, to finally find someone, a company that really shares your stories with the world. And I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
this is my first time to do this live stream. I bet Bobbie, we've been talking in the backstage how nervous we are, but isn't it a great feeling, Bobbie, to have someone really there, and they talk the talk, walk the walk, and sharing your stories. Can you tell us
Absolutely.
more about that experience with Reader's Magnet, Bobbie?
Well, it was unusual. I almost didn't answer it because it was a call from California, and I thought, I'm not answering. It's a telemarketer, and I don't need a warranty on my car. I'm good. But I thought, well, you know what the heck? And what really got me was they had left me a voicemail. And sometimes telemarketers will do that, but most of the time a telemarketer, if you don't answer, they're not going to waste their time. So the voicemail was there, and I thought, well, I'm going to see who it is and see what they want. And it was Karen with Reader's Magnet, and she was saying that she had heard about my book and was encouraged because this time in particular, with the pandemic, everything going on, people need to be inspired and need to be encouraged. And she said that everything in my book was encouraging, and it gave people a chance to laugh and to just have a moment of like one of those where you can just sit back and breathe, like like
Yeah.
that. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe it's just somebody that just wants my money. You know, who doesn't want my money? Anyways, so so anyways, the next time that I saw that number, I went ahead and I answered it, and once again, it was Miss Karen, and she was telling me about Reader's Magnet and how that they would like to help me to get my book out there.
Mm.
And I thought, really? And I was kind of like, why? And then she went through again and she began to explain. And as she spoke, it's the first time I've spoken to somebody regarding my book and marketing that I actually felt comfortable and I felt at ease. And there's a big difference with talking about talking to somebody that they want to help you market your book, but all they care about is what's in it for them. And I actually felt like Reader's Magnet cares about the writers. They don't just care about maybe because you guys got to be paid too, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they don't just care about that bottom line dollar. They actually care about the authors. And that clicked. And so I began to talk more and more with Karen, and as I spoke with Karen, and I mean, and she's so bubbly anyway. It's like, oh my gosh, how can somebody be so bubbly? And so she made me feel that I might actually be able to brand me, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what the book is. It's
Yeah.
branding me and my stories. And you know, it's a hard thing to do, like what we had talked about earlier, to actually sit there and think of myself as a brand and to put it out there
Mm-hmm.
that you really want to buy something from this, but there's actually, the stories are interesting. I mean, I read them over and they're interesting to me, and I lived it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like I
And
said, well, now I've got this new book coming out, the first annual Duck Springs whistling contest, and Karen, my marketing person, sent me over to Riza, who's my author relations, and I mean, they've worked with me all the way down the line. Every time I've needed encouragement, they've been there. Every time I've needed questions answered, they've been right on it.
that's
So
good.
I would recommend them to anybody. And, they've provided this platform now that we're on together.
Right.
Hey, Ryan, I
Indeed,
wouldn't have got to meet you.
indeed,
Yeah.
Bobby.
And
Indeed, and you know what?
this
Or
festival
Janelle, I
of
wouldn't have got you either.
yeah, I know. And this festival of storytellers is truly a testament of the company of Readers Magnet's
Yeah,
mission and vision, that it's not about Readers Magnet, it's about the authors, because
yeah,
this festival of storytellers, ladies and gentlemen, features 150 plus authors that came from different publishers, right?
every
And
genre. Every
yes, and
genre.
Reader's
Yes.
Magnet is a publisher itself, and to think to be featuring several authors and several books coming from various publishers,
Yeah.
that's gold, that's genuine for you.
Hmm.
So, and to be able to host a remarkable virtual event for authors to be able to share their stories with the world, literally this time,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really outstanding. So and I think we're closing down to the 2 minute mark
Oh,
here,
wow.
Ryan.
Yes,
And it was a blast. Thank you
it
so
was.
much,
It
Bobby,
is. It is.
Well, thank
for
you,
for for
Janelle.
gracing us. And I'm gonna give the floor to Ryan to wrap this baby up.
All right. Thank you, Junil. Bobby, there you have it. To our viewers, YouTube viewers out there, and our the festivalstory.com, festivalstorytellers.com viewers, there you have it. The first annual duck whistling contest. That's something that you guys have to look for.
Yeah.
And again, we'd like to thank Bobby for having us talk and discuss about the book. And we love to hear from you, Bobby.
Thank
Readers
you.
Magnet. Orange Digital Tech is going to be looking forward to that painting website, Bobby. Okay.
All right. All right. Well, we'll talk.
All right. We'll talk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having us today. And
Thank
Bobby,
you.
thank you very much.
And thank you guys.
Thank you.